Hi, everyone. Welcome to NeSlavianki, the podcast about women of color in modern Russia. Originally, I started the podcast in Russia, hence the name. But now we're going international, and my first guest is from New York. Hi, Malika. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Did I say your name right?
Yeah, you did, Malika.
Oh my God.
Mariam. Nice to meet you,
Maryam.
Mariam.
Yes. It's weird because, okay, the disclaimer is I'm Russian. I'm Arab Russian. So my name, I'm used to my name, my Arab name, how Russians say it, and I'm not used to like Mariam, how Arabs say it. So it's kind of like a weird thing.
How do
Oh my God,
how
it's
do
so
Russians say
quirky.
it? How do
Mariam,
Russians say it? Mariam.
Mariam.
Well, there's not much of a difference, honestly.
Yeah, my name is spelled differently in my Russian passport, my international passport. We have international passports in Russia, and my Arab passport. And I actually spell my name differently because they translated it in my passport like not the way I like it. So whatever. Maryam. The main point is my name is Maryam and your name is Malika.
Yes.
Uh,
Two
so
Arab
you
names.
Arab. First of all, let's start with your nationality. How do you identify yourself, and what's Arab about your name?
Oh, okay. Nationality wise, I'm American. I was born in America. However, when it comes to ethnicity wise, I'm half Uzbek and half Turkmen. And I'm saying like, oh, Arabic name. Both of us, we have Arabic names because in Arabic, my name is Malika or Malika, and yours is Mariam. And then mine means like queen, and it basically means like either queen or angel. I think it's interchangeable, but it mostly means queen.
My name means bitter, and
Oh.
I'm still processing that. I don't know exactly what that means, like bitter like in character or bitter as like in food. But yeah, I like my name. I always liked it, and I like your name too. Do you have
Thank you. I love
any?
your name.
Thank you. It was my dad's idea to name me Mariam.
It was my dad's idea too. That's so funny.
So, who are your parents? How did you end up in America?
My parents, they met in Uzbekistan. My mom was a journalist and my father was a singer. So they met at my mom's like news TV like show called like Samar in Russian it's like Samarkand Telekampanya. But it basically means Samarkand Television and Company in Samarkand. And my mom was a journalist, as I mentioned. So he just walked in. He was like, "I love this girl. She's cute." They really ended up liking each other. Then they dated for a while. Then they ended up moving. It actually happened like within a year where they decided to come to America. It was because my mom and her other coworkers they wanted to have a show in America, and it was like something to do with like America and showing the values and like culture of America. And my dad wanted to come too, so they got married and they came here, and they ended up liking it so much that they ended up staying here.
So,
Well,
both of your parents are from former USSR.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Well, when they did leave though, that was like 98, or 97 or 98. And so it wasn't obviously former USSR because they gained independence in 91. So they do tell me like a lot about the Soviet Union and stuff. So like I'm able to kind of relate even though I never grew up with that era. So it's really interesting to understand like, oh, like this is what happened during your time, this is what happened during your time. So it's cool.
So, what did they actually tell you about USSR?
They told me like how people were actually very respectful at the time, where people actually respected each other's cultures because it was a melting pot of so many cultures. It wasn't just like each country nowadays, since it's independent, it's each country, but before there were republics. So it was all one union with different republics. So like especially since like Uzbekistan was kind of the centerfold of Central Asia, where like even though there were so many bad things happening in these republics, these like ethnicities would move to Uzbekistan and it would just be a melting pot in itself, this one republic. So they would tell me how like each religion and each like culture, they would really respect one another. They did tell me about the atheist times of Soviet Union and everything. Like for example, my parents are Muslim, but before they didn't really understand what Islam was. But nowadays, like now that the Soviet Union did fall and they came to America, they're practicing in some way. Like for example, I taught my mom how to pray, stuff like that, because like obviously I'm not Sovietified. So stuff like that, just like the really positives of it. But of course, there were like negatives, like for example, forced labor, like cotton picking in Uzbekistan. That was a huge thing. Like other stuff too, you know.
Yeah, so you mentioned that your name has Arabic origins and being Sovietified in Soviet Union. Can you talk more about that, like Arabic influence in Uzbek culture, maybe, and what this Sovietified actually means?
So like Sovietified, I guess like for example, my parents were Sovietified because they grew up in the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, I never grew up in the Soviet Union. I was born in America, you know, what the heck do I know? But for them, they kind of taught me like like the Soviet culture, I guess you could say, which is like in and of itself like its own thing, you know. Um, so like I feel like you would probably understand like how your parents like they grew up in the Soviet Union, meanwhile you didn't, you know, stuff like that. And I guess like when it comes to like because Arab culture is kind of like the centerfold in the Islamic world. And it's kind of the birth of where Islam came from through this one culture. So for it to come into like these other Eastern cultures, such as like Uzbek culture. Arab influence can be seen like throughout Central Asia, really. You can see it like in certain madrasas. You can see it like, and this is like, of course, this is Islamic influence as well. But because Islamic influence, it also came from, it's intertwined with Arab culture. And like you could see it with our names, you know, like Maryam or like Malika. Also, what something that I really find very interesting, and I'm making a video about it soon. Um, I love how like in the Uzbek language, we have these words of like "Khuda ka shukr," meaning like thank God, but also it means Alhamdulillah, you know, or like the grace of God is like Subhanallah, but in Uzbek it would be like Allah namuji sasa, stuff like that, or Khuda namuji sasa. So we have like these words, like these Islamic words, but it has Arabic origin and it's in Uzbek. So like we have like a lot of like intertwining like things when it comes to Arab culture, and it's just so interesting to me, and it's also because of Islam, so I just find it really cool.
So I see you know a lot about like Arabic influence and your language. I don't speak Arabic anymore. I used to speak it, but
Do you
was it
understand
your
it?
yes, a little bit, but I don't have a lot of practice. Like with my current Arab friends, we just speak English just because it's easier. And even with my Serbian friends, like I understand Serbian pretty well and I speak pretty well, but we just switch to English just because like we speak about politics and all these like complicated issues, and I don't have enough of a vocabulary to like speak in a different language other than English. So what I was getting at is, did you learn it? Did you learn about this through your parents or maybe your own research when you were an adult?
Definitely through my own research because I love geography. I grew up loving geography and loving history, and it's also because how Americans here they don't know what Uzbekistan is. Segue to our next topic.
Yes.
It's mostly because like a lot of people here, Americans, like I grew up with Americans all my life, so they don't know where Uzbekistan is. So for me, it was more of like, okay, I don't want to be like these people where I'm uneducated. I wouldn't say that I'm uneducated, but don't know much about geography. So, in order for me to relate to other cultures, instead of me being like, "Where's that?" You know, just being a little more intelligent and understanding of other cultures and other peoples. So for me, it was mostly like just doing some research and just understanding overall other people's cultures and actually experiencing it and asking people instead of being shy, like, "Oh, where are you from?" You know, and then the like the happiness that comes from that person of me knowing where they're from and knowing a little bit of their language. Like for example, when I meet Arabs, like I'm like, "Oh, where are you from?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I'm from Libya." And I'll be like, "Oh, like assalamu alaikum, kayfan halik," you know, stuff like that. Like that's so cool. And then I remember when you and I we had our Zoom meeting 2 weeks ago, just like go over the topics and everything. I was like, "Ahlan wa sahlan." Did you understand what I said?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
did.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I teach my boyfriend a little bit of Arabic, and he retains nothing of it, which is surprising to me because, like, for me, it's like Alhamdulillah or like Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's like
Ooh,
pretty much,
period.
pretty much like, you know, it's like, hi, how are you? Things like that. And he's like, I don't even know where the next word starts or like, what are you saying? I cannot retain any of it. So yeah, I think even though I don't speak Arabic per se, it definitely helped me. And I think it like broadened my horizon because growing up in Russia, I spoke just Russian, a little bit of Arab, and a little bit of time that I've spent on in the Middle East definitely like broadened my horizons, and I understood very quickly that I'm not like other Russians in many ways. Many Russians don't speak any other language, even English. Even Russians that live in Serbia now, they do not speak like a word of Serbian, and I find it very strange.
Oh yeah,
But
I understand
for
because
me,
like I live in New York, so like same thing. I live in New York, and of course, as you probably know, like there's a ton of Russian immigrants here. They don't speak a lick of English, and I'm pretty understanding with it because I mean, my parents are immigrants too, so I have like that empathy. But it's just like I don't speak Russian, so it's like, what do you expect me to speak to you, and what are you going to speak to me? You're going to speak to me in Russian. I'm going to speak to you in English.
you mentioned how Americans don't know anything about Central Asia and Uzbekistan, and what is this country even located? Like, what is even this country? Can you talk more about that? About Americans being stupid Americans?
Okay, so like yes, we do have that stereotype. So my husband's Canadian and he always says like y'all Americans are kind of stupid. And I'm like, yeah, you're totally right. So like it makes sense because like Canadians are so much smarter than Americans and like they actually know about America than us. Meanwhile, when I first met him, I didn't understand anything about Canada. So that just comes to show how like us Americans, we kind of live in our own bubble and we kind of sold ourselves to be the most amazing country in the entire world, to be America, like the best country in the world. So we kind of sold ourselves on that and sold everybody on that. But we kind of just live in our own bubble to the point where our education system doesn't teach important like geography. So I just kind of like made a vow to myself that I wouldn't be like a typical old American where I don't know much about like countries of like other than America, or that I wouldn't understand languages other than English. So I just kind of made a vow because I wanted to broaden my horizons. Because if you just live in your own bubble, that kind of sucks, like that's kind of boring. It's really boring to just live in your own little bubble. So yeah, like growing up, like I was born in Miami, Florida. So and then I grew up in the Keys. So Keys just just white Americans, like African Americans, Hispanics. That's all that you'll find there. So like my family and I'm an only child, so my parents and I just being like one family, just randomly in the middle of the Keys, and then just people being like, "Where are you from?" And then my parents, of course, they would either say Russia, they would either say Russia, because like it made sense, or they would be like, if it was like kind of like an ethnic person, Turkiya, right, like Turkey, um just like anything like that. So anything except our own, because we already know it's always going to be like, what, Pakistan? So that's all I got all my life, by the way. That's all I ever got. Just what, Pakistan? It's like, no, I didn't make a mistake in what I was telling you. I meant to say Uzbekistan, not Pakistan. So like growing up, it was hard because like I tried to understand myself, but I couldn't even understand because I was just a kid. So like imagine explaining to like a 40 something or like a 30 something year old adult, like, where are you from, little girl? Or like, where are your parents from? And I'll be like, Uzbekistan. They'll be like, Pakistan. It's like, how do I explain to that? So I guess for me it was like my parents also, like, other than like research, my own ways of reading and understanding like my culture, also observing, and just like my parents just teaching me a lot of their culture and explaining to me like, this is where Uzbekistan is. You're also half Turkmen, you're not just Uzbek. There's like a multitude of different people that live in Uzbekistan. It's a melting pot. It once used to be part of the Soviet Union. So growing up, I kind of like learned all of that, all of my observations, all of my research, all of my parents' teachings, and I kind of just put it into adulthood. And from adulthood, I just ended up like, when instead of just being like, oh, Turkey, I want to be the generation in which I actually tell people, wait, it's Uzbekistan. It used to be part of the Soviet Union, and I actually educate people. And even if they're ignorant, it's like, I can't really change that. I can't change that. That's not my doing. So yeah, growing up, that's pretty much what happened. That's the huge shift that occurred. And once I got into adulthood, I eventually decided to open up like social media and everything and teach people. So it's not just like one person that I talk to every day and yap about my culture, but it's like thousands of people that I get to explain where it is. And
Mhm.
it's just, it mostly stemmed from like growing up and being like, where is that? You know, Pakistan? No, Uzbekistan.
No, I definitely understand because I obviously don't look Russian, and people always ask like where I'm from and things like that. And sometimes people would know more about my culture than I am. Like one time I met this guy who was studying Arabic cultures, Arabist. Yeah, and he started speaking at me in Arabic, and I'm like, guy, like he's literally a white man, and he speaks more Arabic than me, and I'm like,
No, like that's a
girl, I
culture
know that.
shock. That's a huge culture shock. That's happened to me multiple times where like white Americans would speak to me in Uzbek and they'll be like, I studied this language. Like I've been to Russia multiple times. I went to Russia when it was during the Soviet Union and I also went to Uzbekistan. I'm like, how did you learn that? That's crazy. Or like I took a summer in Uzbekistan. I was bored and I wanted to learn the language. Like I could think of like five people in my head that are white American and that know Uzbek. So like I completely understand.
Hmm. Yeah, so I also met when I was a teenager, I met this guy and he wanted to make friends and he was like racking his brain about Arabic things that he knows. And you know the Arabic spelling, it's called baz in Russian. Again, I don't know how it is in English, but it's called like baz in Russian. He was like, "Oh, your spelling is baz, right?" And I'm like, "I don't even know what it's called." And I'm like, "No, it's just like hieroglyphs or something." And later I find out that he was actually right. And he was asking me about it. I'm like, girl, I'm clueless. I don't know anything. Like, you
Okay,
can
well,
teach
for
me about it.
you, you're a fair case. It's because you're half Russian and half Arab. That's why. Like, for you, it's mostly because like you just aren't connected to one side. And I completely understand. Like, I'm half Turkmen, but if it wasn't for me married to my husband, like I wouldn't really understand about my Turkmen ethnicity. Like my dad's Turkmen and my mom's Uzbek. So like I completely get what you mean.
Yeah, so speaking of anecdotes, you're mentioning something about Borat comparison at the doctor's office.
Yeah. Okay. So like once, I my mom had a doctor's appointment and she wanted me to go and I was like, okay, cool. I was a kid, you know. I'm like, okay, my mommy wants to take me, I'll go with her. So I decided to go with her. And this one guy, it was like I think he was like a new doctor of hers, was like, where are you guys from? And it's like, Uzbekistan. And then be like, oh, have you ever heard of Borat? You're a doctor. You are literally a doctor. This is your professional field. You should not be watching Borat. And even if you do watch it, watch like this inappropriate movie, which is like completely satirical. It's a funny movie. Great. You know, like that's the whole point. It's supposed to make fun of like Central Asia, I guess, to Americans. But like it's satirical and it's great. It's a funny movie. It stars like cool actors, but it's like you shouldn't be sharing that to your patients. It's just so weird. So I've gotten a lot of Borat comparisons. I've gotten it a lot in my social media comments too. Sometimes like a random person would be like, "Oh, Borat," and it's like, "Ha ha ha!" But that joke is like 10 years old.
I got not Borat comparison, but one time I think I got back from Jordan at one point and I went to the doctor. It was a like children's doctor of some kind. And she asked me how was Arabistan. And I'm like,
I mean,
hmm,
Arabistan, that kind of makes sense because like we call it
I don't
Arabistan too.
know. I don't know if
But
it
but
does.
we refer to Arabistan as like the overall Middle East, you know, like all the Arab countries. But like I guess that kind of makes sense. That's not like awful.
Okay, she got the ethnicity part right, but other than that, I consider it racist personally. Like, girlie, if you're watching this, you're racist. You were racist then, and she's probably racist now because we
You're
don't have
you're
like this
racist then
kind
and
of
you're a racist
education.
now. You're a racist then and you're a racist now, period.
She's probably more racist now, to be honest, because it's all gone downhill from my childhood, pretty much. I
It do
feel
be
like.
like that. It do be like that. Because like a lot of Central Asians, they face a lot of racism in Russia too. And like
Mhm.
not only just Central Asians, but like any other ethnicity too, I believe, right? I think like black people they suffer from racism in Russia too,
They
right?
suffer from casual racism, definitely. And the black people that I do see who are successful, they usually in some kind of media. Either they're like actors or like bloggers or like spokesperson for something, but you never see black doctors or like regular professions.
So they're like second class citizens, right? That's
Yes,
awful.
and I feel like they have this duty to uphold this image of black person as like entertainer. I don't know if it's
Mm,
relatable for America, but I feel like in Russia we used to black people just being like a joke or like someone who entertains
yeah.
you, and if they dare to speak about racism or some heavier topics, it's like, girl, you have a job. Like you should not be complaining.
I think
Yeah, so
Americans would relate to that too. African Americans are always like the butt of the joke. Like they have to be funny, they have to be entertaining. It's like that in a lot of like Hollywood movies. So, oh
yeah.
man, that's awful.
Maybe you know about this, maybe not, but Soviet Union had relations with African countries because they're communist and things like that. And we actually have an international university in Moscow named after Patrice Lumumba, the first democratic leader of Congo. Yes, and USSR obviously supported Black liberation in Africa specifically and post-colonial period of these countries. So in theory, Black people should thrive, like African Black people should thrive in Russia. And I feel like before they did, and now the trend is racism against everyone. I feel like Serbia is better at it. I've seen black news anchors. I've seen like black bloggers, specifically African American bloggers that live in Serbia and like rave about it, and they say that they feel safe here, they feel welcomed, and not only bloggers, of course, like they're a public figure. It's in their best interest to praise the country they're representing. But I see a lot of like black people, I want to say in subway. We don't have subway on the buses, like just regular people working. And I haven't seen that a lot in Moscow specifically. We usually have like Central Asian people working. If it's an immigrant, it's usually like a Central Asian person, not a black person, or like some kind of Asian person. So yes, and also Serbia has a lot of history with African countries as well. Back when slavery was still a thing, they had like former Yugoslavia had a law that if you're an enslaved person and you enter Serbian land, you become a free person. So you're a free person in Serbia, even if you're enslaved in your country of origin. I'll put a link somewhere in the description. It's very interesting. I just recently found out about it. I didn't know anything about like Serbian like people and things like that before, but I feel like it's more ingrained in the history of seeing black people as free people is richer here. Like they had much more time to develop this understanding, like this is just a black person, it's not an African American person, it's not a slave, it's not like international students, just like black person living here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never heard of that actually. That's really cool.
Yeah, have you heard of Serbia before? Trick
I have
question.
heard of Serbia before. Yeah, I have. I remember like when we would study about like World War II, like Serbia was mentioned a lot. So yeah, definitely.
I'm glad. Ponos. Ponos is pride in Serbian. This year's Pride motto was Ponos su ljudi, pride is people. Yeah, so
Oh.
pride me like pride, not a pride parade, but like pride, the feeling. Pride is people, and I was very happy to see it. But funny thing is that ponos is diarrhea in Russian, is and it's spelled the same. So whenever I see like merch with the word ponos, I'm like, okay, I'm happy for you, but I'm not buying that. Like, guys, I love you, but I
I
cannot.
don't want to get the disease. I don't want diarrhea too.
Not even like getting the disease, but just like I don't know. I feel weird about it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely understand because like in my parents like being Soviet like from the Soviet Union and all, they also say panos, they say like these Russian terms because like there's no exact translation in Uzbek. And I guess that would be the same with a lot of like former Soviet Union republics. the fact that like we don't have technical words for it, but we have to use the European words for it. It's just so
Yes.
interesting to me.
Do you have any relation to like Russian language? Not that you have to. You don't have to. Just I'm asking if you have any relation to Russian language or like do you understand a little bit?
I understand a lot. I feel like I understand a lot of what is being said to me, and I feel like um, I'm always very like humble about it. I'm like, oh, like I feel like I don't understand anything, but like my mom was actually like, what the heck? Like she could have a whole conversation in Russian to me, right? Or like she like mimics something of what happened to her day, and she just happens to tell me in Russian, and I'll just be like, okay, so like then what happened? Like I understand that that happened, this happened, but then what happened? She's like, what? So like I feel like I personally don't give myself enough credit, but I think I do understand it a lot. I think I do understand a lot. I sound I don't sound correct when I'm speaking Russian, so like I'd rather just not say anything at all. I just respond in
Mhm.
English.
Yes, I feel the same with Serbia. Like, I went to a conference here. I went to like public talks strictly in Serbian. I went to all of these things that you have to understand a lot to even like know what's going on. And I was fine, but my head was buzzing so much. I saw that meme like when you come home after speaking your third and second
Oh
language
my
all
god,
day. This
yeah.
is like literally my everyday life. Like I do understand it, I speak it, but like it's still a little bit hard for me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely understand. That's me with Russian. It's just such a hard language, you know? Slavic languages are very hard. They really are.
Yes, they are. And in Serbian, you would think that you would have an easier time to learn Serbian as a Russian speaker, but it's very deceiving. Like they have words that sound the same and mean the completely different thing, or like conjugation. They in Serbian we have conjugation, and the word changes, but it changes in a different conjugation than Russian conjugation. So
Yeah.
you have to think more. I feel like when I was learning Swedish, I had an easier time and I still retain like a little bit of Swedish, maybe because it's like completely different. And my brain, like, oh, this is a new thing. I have to remember it. But in Serbian, your brain is like, oh, this is like basically the same. Why would I need to retain it? I'm like, no. I hear the first part of the word. I'm like, okay, I got it. You do not get it. Like, you have to conjugate it properly.
It that's what happens with like a lot of dialects though. I feel like that's because like you just feel so cocky about it. You're like, oh, it's okay, like it's fine, like I think I understand it, but then you just end up not understanding it. I get that. It's
Yeah.
annoying.
But actually, I've met Serbians that speak like perfect Russian.
Yeah. Yeah, like the
Or
older folk, right?
older folk, not so much. They usually retain a little bit of Russian and they don't speak a word of English like, whatsoever. So it's like mostly Serbian, a little bit of Russian. They're like English, no. But I've met a couple of people that went to international schools here. We have, I think, like two Russian schools that teach in Russian. One with the embassy. One school is from the embassy, I think, and the other one just like some random Russian school. Yeah, so I've met people that speak perfect Russian, and I'm like, oh, hi, you're from Russia, blah, blah, blah. They're like, no, I'm actually Serbian. I just went to Russian school. I'm like, okay. And it's weird because, like, I met this when I was in Riga, in Latvia. I was staying with this girl from Couchsurf, and she speaks like 99 perfect Russian, but she grew up in part of Latvia that was like mostly Russian speaking. So we would speak in Russian and I would mention some type of like pop cultural moment or like something from television and she has no idea what I'm talking about because she grew up with a completely different like set of references. I'm like, oh, you don't actually know who that is, but you speak perfect Russian. And she
That's
would tell me,
fascinating.
yeah, and she would tell me about these old movies that they watch like once a year. Some like in Russian, we have these movies that you watch in the New Year's and things like that. And
Oh
in
yeah, yeah, I
Latvia,
know what you're talking about. I know you're talking about Ironia Sudba, right?
yeah, ironia судьбы или с легким паром. Yeah, so
Love I love that movie so much. We watch it every year for New Year's as well. My parents are obsessed with that movie. I know
I
every
actually
single thing
hate it.
of that movie.
I
I love
actually
it.
hate it with a
You
passion.
hate it?
I hate it. Like, first of all,
Is
the
it because
main
it's so
character.
mainstream? Is it because it's
No,
mainstream and
no,
like
no,
it's
no, no, no.
constantly
No, not that. Just like I'm annoyed by main characters that are males and they get away with so much. I'm just annoyed. Like I always watched it on the background. Like when you're with the family and you just put this movie on the background and
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
like eat and talk and things like that and you don't pay attention to the actual plot. And I think last year was the first time when I actually like watched it for the plot and started following the plot. And I'm like, this is garbage. Maybe because you watch it in English or you watch it in Russian.
No, I watched it in Russian. I had the subtitles in English.
Oh, I find it so annoying. Like this is so.
It's like 2 hours, two parts in 2 hours. Like that's a 4 hour movie. That's crazy.
And for what? For some men? Hello? Just kick him out. Like I don't understand what's the problem.
I guess that's the part of it where it's like it's so simple, you know? It's a simple movie and that's why people love it. It's like it's
Mhm.
nostalgia too.
I cannot deal with this. I would just kick him out. Maybe I just have anger issues. That might be part of it. I just
Maybe
take no bullshit. I just take no bullshit. Like you cross me once, it's like bye bye. I don't even know you. Like
hot girls have anger issues.
yeah, also mixed race girls have anger
Yeah,
issues.
that too. Period.
When you constantly have to explain to people the most fundamental thing about yourself, and people argue with you sometimes, and you're like, girl, maybe I know best. People talk down on you because you're a woman. They're like mansplaining things to you. And this combo is just like, I cannot deal with this.
I mean, I don't have people in my life where it's like that happens usually. Uh, I personally just don't like it when like people in my comment section, they think that they have like a university degree in WhatsApp University or Instagram University. Um, so like I tend to ignore that usually. So like that's the only good thing about it. But yeah, I don't like when people mansplain either. It's annoying.
Yes, so we were talking about national identity. I'd like
Yeah,
to
we're so
reel back a
behind. Come on, girl, Maryam.
yes. So, speaking about your national identity, do you have any tips and tricks on maintaining your national identity or not maintaining it, maybe?
I guess it's just to like understand your culture more, whether it's through research, whether it's through observations, whether it's through like parents or siblings or family members. Um, I mean, I can't really speak for everybody because not everybody has family near them at all times because there's so many people with so many different stories. There's diaspora kids. Like for example, I'm a diaspora kid, but I do have my parents, but like for such a long time, I've never visited Uzbekistan in my life up until like last summer. So um also like there's also so many people where they came to the States by themselves, they don't have family, they can't even like go to their local like Uzbek or like a Turkmen or like Arab restaurant where they can just like enjoy their food, or it's mostly being cooked by like non-Arab people or non like people of that ethnicity, for example. So I can't really speak for everybody, but I guess it's just important to like preserve your identity and just like be proud of it, and just know like who you are exactly, even if you can't like celebrate it, even if you can't like shout it over the rooftops. It's just important to know what you are really. So growing up, it was really hard for me to understand who I was because there's obviously not much representation of Asian Americans in a positive light in America. And even if it is Asian Americans, it's just like the regular Chinese, Korean, Japanese folk. But it's never like people like me. Like I'm Central Asian, and people they love to in America, it's just, oh, they love to just like identify with Asian as like the Far East, like the East, but it's not like people of the actual East, like people like me, that are Central Asian. So for me, it was always hard to get representation, and I always wanted to strive for representation. Not would I wouldn't say always strive for representation because honestly, like social media and everything was kind of just an accident where it was like, oh, a video of mine went viral, people ended up really liking it. Okay, you know what? I could actually continue off with this. So from that, that was kind of something that I strived for just from that, where it was a lot of people ended up really liking my content from just one video. So I decided to continue from that. But before, it was like I kind of hated being different. I kind of hated being Central Asian, but also being American at the same time. Yeah, my parents would always be like, remember, like, you are American. It's okay to feel these things. But it's like, no, it's like, I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't feel like I'm so different from everybody. since I've become a content creator, a lot of people they kind of like come to me for advice with like DMs and stuff. I get like DMs of people being like, "Oh, my wife or is Uzbek or like my girlfriend or like my husband or whatever the case may be." It's like this person happens to have the same culture as you and I've been following you for a while and it's like what advice could you give me or like I need some help. And it's just so nice. It's like people come to me as if I'm their therapist, but I love it. It's just so cool because like I get to give advice to people and it's just really nice to be able to get like messages like, oh, because of you, I've embraced my culture a lot more. And it's just really nice because it's like I'm the person that helped you and I'm just really happy. Really, it's just
Mhm.
really cool to see that because I get that a lot and it's just really nice to be able to uh understand where they're coming from too.
Yes, I
Mm.
feel like in specifically like Russian spaces, Uzbeks and Central Asians have a really bad rap. And I don't know if anyone is even trying to break the stigma, specifically like Russian speaking world. And I feel like if anyone's Russian watching this, you see like positive representation of Uzbeks, and I think it's very valuable. I think this is very admirable what you're doing, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I love like your podcast too. It's just so nice that you were able to invite me and like have this is the first episode that's in English, right?
Yes, this is the first episode, and it's not going to be the last. I'm planning to do a whole season in English. Yes, I have plans of filming with NGOs that's specialize in women's rights because I filmed like 3 episodes, I think, with Russian NGOs that specialize in preventing domestic violence amongst women of color and also work against human trafficking in Russia. And one of the groups that highly affected by human trafficking and sex trafficking is women of color in Russia. So I've talked about these topics with them, and I feel like I want to expand more and talk with different NGOs and different organizations on how they deal with these problems. I feel like it's going to be very interesting, at least for me. This is vanity project. This is all for me. But yes, I'm really excited about this season. I know a lot of my friends weren't able to watch my previous episodes in Russian, but now like everyone can watch it. And thank you for being the pioneer in
Oh,
in
that's nice.
this
Thank you.
in this thing that I'm doing. My final question for you is, do you have any words or phrases that you want to teach us in Uzbek?
Thank you to everyone. Hamaya Rahmat.
Hammaye Rahmat.
Yeah, there we go. Rahmat actually comes from Arabic too, by the way, like Rahman. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's where Rahmat comes from. Rahmat is the word thank you in Uzbek.
In Serbian, it's hvala. You can
Hvala.
say hvala puno. It's like big thank you. Thank you so much.
Hvala. Perfect.
Yes, and in Russian, it's spasiba, obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
In Swedish, is tack så mycket. Uh, big thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in Arabic it's shukran.
Shukran, yes. And obviously, like Spanish, gracias. Muchas gracias. Actually, I know just one word in Putonghua in Mandarin is like shetia, and I use it all the time, and it's always a hit. It always a
Yeah.
hit. So
I know that one too.
shetia,
I know that one too.
yeah, shetia is always a hit. Use it, abuse it. Nobody ever complains about it. And maybe like hi, how are you, or bye.
Okay, so hi is assalamu alaikum. But that's like more formal if you just want to like talk to me. Like we're probably the same age. So like salam. And how are you is kaleses or kaleses. Siz meaning the formal word for it. Like the formal phrase if you were to talk to someone older than you. So kind of like in Russian, how it's like v and th. And in like in Uzbek, if we were to say like you and me, kalesan or kandesan. And bye is hayed. Hayed.
Yes. Okay, Malika, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
I
Maryam.
can't wait to see your platform grow and for more people to learn about Uzbek culture. And thank you for everyone listening and watching. And please subscribe to our channel, my channel, NeSlavianki, and I'll see you in the next episodes. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Do widzenia.
Hi.